and I'll give you a countdown. We are recording in 5, 4, 3, 2. Another one of the great opportunities of my life is to talk to my former students who are distinguished graduates of the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at San Jose State. I have one with me here today. Colleen Odegaard, as I know you, you have a married name now, but good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. When you said distinguished, I went, is he talking about me? Surely he's not talking about me.
You're just being modest.
It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too, and beautiful home you have there, and certainly a beautiful life for yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you've done since graduation in 1992.
Oh, that was like 75 years ago was what it feels like. People are probably going, 92. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been almost 30 years. When I left San Jose State after I graduated, 3 days after I graduated, I moved to Laredo, Texas for my first on-air job. I started applying when I was still in your classes, when I was still going to San Jose State, and I got a job as an anchor producer in Laredo, Texas. So I moved there, worked there for about a year. Then I went to Lubbock, Texas, where I started off as a one-man band. This is back in the day too, with the 3/4-inch gear. I know you remember that.
I
with
do.
The big neck and the big tapes, and and it was hot as you know what in Lubbock, Texas. And I was walking around. In those days too, ladies, we wore pantyhose and stuff. So I was in full get up, makeup, sweating, and carrying all this gear and shooting for myself. And then I started anchoring the news on the weekends there. And then I moved to Salinas, California. So I was happy to be back in California. And I worked there for 4 years. And I did evening news. I anchored the evening news, and then I moved to mornings. I was doing the news, and then they did sort of a lifestyle kind of a show. And I started doing that. After I left Salinas, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. So at the time, and tell me if I'm talking too long, you can interrupt me. I don't know how much of this you want.
No, you're good. You're doing good.
When I was in Salinas, I had an agent at the time, and I remember getting a call from my agent saying, "Yeah, how do you feel about Charlotte?" I said, "Charlotte? Where's Charlotte?" And she said, "In North Carolina." I was like, "North Carolina? I mean, I guess I'll go." And then the news director, the NBC affiliate here, flew me out, and I did an audition, had an interview, and they offered me the morning news slot. And it was a much bigger market, I think at the time it was the 28th market, so
wow.
Bigger than I was. So then I took it, and that was 22 years ago this month.
Wow, congratulations.
So yeah, and and in that time, I planted roots. I wanted to do that. I got married and had kids and very involved in this community. So there were opportunities to leave and go to other markets, but they were never quite the right job, and it never seemed like the right time. And I'm so grateful to God that I've stayed here, because this is my home now, and I love this town.
And you look very happy doing this. I've seen you on Facebook with your family. You have a beautiful family. Tell me a little bit about your culture, and were you born and raised in California?
Yeah. So I was actually born in New Jersey, but I grew up in San Jose. We moved to San Jose when I was 8 years old. So I grew up there, and that's my home. My ethnicity, I'm Norwegian, is Odegaard, very Scandinavian sounding. But I'm Vietnamese. My mother is from Vietnam, so I'm half Vietnamese, which was interesting. When I started on TV, I forgot to tell you guys, I host a show called Charlotte Today now. I don't do the news anymore. I'm still working at the same TV station. The show I do is talk show, lifestyle show, integrated content. So it means paid for content at times. That's the show that I do now, and it's more suited to my personality. I like to do interviews and cook in the kitchen. We're not doing that right now, but I like to do that more fun stuff. But when I started on TV here in Charlotte 22 years ago, I remember getting a letter from somebody, and people never knew quite what to make of me, because they see my name looked Scandinavian, but I didn't look it. And I got a letter from somebody and said, what's with your eyes? What are you? Are you a beep? And used a derogatory word for Asian people. I remember that was shortly after I started here, and I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? This town is not like that at all. And it's changed a lot. Yeah, that was something that I had not encountered before.
So that was a rude awakening to get a message like that.
What?
And what have you felt in the last year with all these comments about the COVID-19 virus being given a name by one of the leaders of this country? What are your thoughts about that and some of the concerns of Asian attacks?
Mm-hmm. Well, my concerns, I think, those comments are ignorant and racist, obviously. I mean, that's not up for debate in my book. Yeah, it's very troubling to see that, and even just what that does to, I think during this time between Black Lives Matter and, as you mentioned, leaders of this country calling it, the incorrect name for the virus, it's forced all of us just personally to have to look inward and look at what it is that we believe and the language we use and what's really in our hearts and what are our conscious biases, which we all have, to be aware of them. And as a profession, certainly in journalism, I think it requires us, the industry, to really look at how are we telling these stories? What kinds of language are we using? What kinds of words are we using? And Bob, that for years, those kinds of conversations have been going on in newsrooms all across this country.
Yes.
But I think
Yes.
at this time, I feel like, I don't know if you think this, but it feels like the conversation is different now and more intense and more on purpose. And I'm grateful for that. I certainly know that in our newsroom, WCNC, Charlotte, they are having a lot of conversations about how they cover all of these stories. What is the appropriate tone, and how do we do this, and how do we do this safely, and all of those things.
And you remember the diversity of the Bay Area when you were a student here at San Jose State. Compare that to what you have now. Describe the community there in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, San Jose obviously is very diverse, and Charlotte has changed a lot, as I mentioned, in the 22 years that I've been here. It's a far more diverse city now than what it was. I mean, it's different, obviously, than San Jose. There was some little bit of culture shock. When I moved here, I remember my mom saying to me, are there Asians in Charlotte? I'm pretty sure there are, Mom. I'm pretty sure there are. And sure enough, there are, yes. So, 22 years ago, it was a little bit different, but it's far more diverse now. And I'm proud of the way this community has really even embraced Black Lives Matter, and I think that people really want and know that we have to do things differently when it comes to diversity and embracing our cultures.
And yet Californians don't know anything about the South. I have relatives who live in Georgia, so I grew up spending summers in the South, and it's a very different environment, wouldn't you say, than California?
Yes, it is different. I'd say it is different.
I think the foods are good. The foods are fantastic in the South.
Like
you don't
food?
eat, but I would love it down there. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I love Southern food now, y'all. I love me some Southern food. I love it now. And I've even grown accustomed to the sultry weather here, where you go outside and it's sticky in the air. But yes, no, it is different from California. But in some ways, but really, I think still, people are people wherever you go. And right. I think that a lot of the stereotypes, it's certainly not the experience that I have in Charlotte. Charlotte is a big city, so it's maybe not what you think of if you think like small Southern town, what maybe comes to mind or what you see depicted in films, in movies. It's not like that. So
you do have diversity is exactly the point. I remember when I visited the South as a child, I actually remember once our parents were driving us to visit my aunt and uncle, and we wanted to stop to get some ice cream. And we were told, no, you can't. You're African-American, you're Black. You can't do that. And there were signs, this is for Blacks, this is for whites. That was when I was young. In modern Atlanta and in Georgia, when I visit, I find it very progressive, very engaging, very welcoming. How about you? When you made the transition from being a California student and graduate and worker to North Carolinian, did they talk about your accent? Did they talk about not only the way you look, but the way you interact with people?
Not so much. They talked about that I don't have a Southern accent for sure, but most people on the air here don't. But I really felt embraced by this community, but a lot of that was incumbent upon me too in getting involved. And that's what I think for anybody, right? That you can make the most out of any place.
Exactly. And you
Yeah.
have an African-American co-host for your Charlotte program, Charlotte Today.
Yeah, I do. Eugene Robinson is my co-host. He played in the National Football League for 16 years. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Packers and
Boo.
and the Seahawks. He played for Atlanta, and he also played a season with the Carolina Panthers. But yes, he is my co-host. He is my co-host.
And the rapport you two seem to have is fantastic. It's comfortable. The public likes you. How long have you two been paired together?
5 years now, I think it is. And yeah, he's one of my best friends. I mean, I love him. He's a very dear friend to me, good friend to my family, and been very fortunate to have excellent co-hosts. Students. I hope they all get good co-hosts and good colleagues.
Or co-workers, for sure. Absolutely. So let's talk about Black Lives Matter. The reaction here in California was stunned at what happened in Minneapolis to George Floyd. How would you describe your community's reaction to that?
I would say that our community was also stunned. And for people, and I'll say this, Bob, I think for people, I think we were all shocked, right? To watch the video should hurt your heart. It should make you feel something. It should make you stick to your stomach. And I don't know how a human being can see that and not have been affected by it. I think what happened afterward and what has happened afterward, I think that for people who are shocked by the outrage or by the anger or by the sentiment afterward, I think that those people are not paying attention. I don't know how, that's what I think. I think that those people are sleepwalking. If you're surprised by the reaction of the Black community after what we saw after George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, I think that you're not paying it, that you don't have a finger on the pulse of it. So there's a segment of the population, it's happening all over the place. You see the hateful posts on social media and the back and forth, and you see it on cable news, you see it everywhere, unfortunately. But yeah, our community certainly was shocked. And, we had a lot of protests here. There were a lot of marches, and it's been a difficult time, but so important. And again, my hope is that the conversation is different this time, that people are looking inward.
I think you're right. I think the world community has also joined us in wanting to talk about racism. I've waited my whole life to hear people say that out loud. Most times, whether it's my students, my colleagues, my coworkers, now let's not talk about that. It's uncomfortable. We don't want to deal with it. The George Floyd moment in America triggered this kind of tsunami, they say, across the world, where not only do they want to talk about Blacks and police, which is a major topic here in California, but also let's just talk about racism in the workplace, racism in our job activities, people we encounter on our jobs. I've talked to a lot of my former students around the country, and they tell me that the Black Lives Matter movement has finally taught people to not only show respect, but to speak in a more respectful manner. Would you agree in your community?
I would. I think it's making people be more mindful of what they say and how they say it. And for some people, they might be more aware of it because they're afraid they're going to say something wrong or get in trouble, and even if that's okay, so I still think that's okay, because it still forces you to look at this dark place within yourself. And I think that that's good. I think that's what we're called to do, is to notice, like, what comes up for me? What am I thinking when, the unconscious bias that we all have that I mentioned. I think it requires us to do that. So yes, I do think it's making people be more careful about how they speak. And I also hope that it's forcing companies and to look at their diversity programs within their organizations, not just in TV, any organization, that everybody needs a seat at the table, that there's a reason diversity programs need to exist. And the reason we need lots of cultures and lots of different kinds of people, groups, communities represented.
Exactly.
We know there's a need for that.
And that's the beauty of my diversity class. we start out with everybody being from different cultures and background, which is one of the reasons why I came to San Jose State, because I love that. You know, I had never met someone from the Vietnamese culture. I'd never met too many people who had spoken Spanish as their first language. A few years ago, I spent some time counseling students after the election of Donald Trump in 2016, because my students were afraid their parents were going to be deported.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know how to deal with it. And we're still dealing with the DACA issue even today. On your program, I don't know if you deal with those type of heavy issues, but in your community and in your workplace, how do people deal with those heavier issues? Do they want to take on the DACA issue or the racism issue, or they'd rather not go that deep?
Mm-hmm. I think they do. I think they do now. You know, on our program, it depends, right? We certainly have our content tends to be lighter, although we do some heavy, serious topics. But certainly within the news, I do think we have good diversity on our staff, and I think that all of the Charlotte TV stations do. And I think that there is definitely a voice for disenfranchised communities, and that there's a desire to tell those stories. So I don't think that we're shying away from it now. I think that more than anything, people are diving in, and it does make some people uncomfortable. You know, I've talked with colleagues in the newsroom and said, you know, how's that morning meeting going? And, you know, and some people are, you know, like, we've got to do this. No, wait, we can't do that. Well, wait a minute. Why then? We need to cover it from, you know, white people's perspective. And it starts, that starts, and it's like, oh gosh, but they're going there. They're going there to their credit. And I think that it's okay to be uncomfortable. It should feel awkward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I've talked to some newspaper graduates in the profession who said they've had to have some, wait a minute, folks, talking to the editors, before you do that, why do you want to put that picture of a white person on the front page talking about the protest when clearly most of the people in the protest are people of color? And it has forced that conversation in the newsroom. Are we trying as editors and producers and bosses to tamp things down because they can't deal with it? I find that to be fascinating, and that seems to be what you're saying.
Yes, that is fascinating, and that's what I'm talking about as a profession where it forces you to sort of to go there, and as an individual where you have to spend, you know, I think taking the time to be quiet and still, and it might sound hokey to some people, but really getting clear about what is it that I think and believe,
Exactly.
and how does this affect my work?
Exactly. And how to read people a little bit better. You know, it's not easy sometimes to understand the history of everybody's culture and what they've had to deal with. But it is easy to listen. And if people will just talk and share enough so that there can be an exchange, new opportunities take place. But let me move on, because I wanted to ask you about COVID-19. One of the issues of 2020 for everybody all over the world is surviving this pandemic. It has changed the news operations in many ways. I talked to a friend of mine on the East Coast in a major city that says some of the younger reporters moving up in the ranks, you know, like you did to get where you are, they've moved up to larger cities now, and they are people of color, women and men, who want to stay at home. They do not want to go out on the street like we normally would as a TV reporter because of COVID-19, the dangers of it. And when you talk to their photographers who are veterans that have been around for 20, 30 some years, they're like, hey kid, lighten up. We've been here, we're still alive. Have you noticed any of this thought going on in your community?
I'm not totally surprised to hear that. Yeah. Well, you know, there's always the grizzly old photographer who's been doing this forever. And he's like, it's fine. Come on. I've seen worse. You know, there's always those guys in the newsroom. Yeah, I think that, and you know, to the company's credit, the Tegna is our company. They've been very good at practicing safety and letting people, you know, do what is comfortable for them. Certainly and very strict rules too about, you know, it's changed the whole workflow for TV.
Right.
I mean, I think that for everybody, I mean, you're here, you know, this is where I've been doing the show from my house, you know, and we're not going in the studio, and our reporters aren't even coming into the TV station. Reporters and photographers are meeting out in the field they're supposed to be socially distancing. If they're interviewing another person, they have to be wearing a mask and standing 6 feet apart, and we're using boom mics and all kinds of stuff. So, but you know, I think but yes, there are some people who don't feel comfortable, and if they don't, they've been willing, our station at least has been willing to work with them and do stuff from home more often. But what's interesting is what I think is the way that has changed the way we do business and the way we work.
What do you mean exactly about that?
There's 4 people in the TV station. I mean, it's like bare skeleton crew in the building. I mean, there's 1 anchor in, you know, now in the evening, they've got 2 anchors, but they've got them separated. And there is, I think, a director. There's not even a producer in the building. You know, they're calling in from home, and it's that part is crazy to me. That part's crazy.
And one thing that's likely to happen when COVID is finally under control and we have a cure or a vaccine or whatever, is that every corporation is going to look back at this time period. And even though our students feel stressed and the faculty feel stressed and we don't really like teaching on Zoom, but learning on Zoom, but we've learned that this is a technology that's not going anywhere. And instead of fighting it and being angry about it and disappointed, we're not getting the experience that we thought we would. Some companies are going to turn it the other way and say, we learned something from that experience. Let's continue to do part of our work on Zoom, or let's continue some of the safety practices because it makes sense in the 21st century. Can you see your show or your station saying to you, hey, listen, you look more comfortable at home. Why don't you guys stay at home?
I think for a while. I don't know that it'll be that way forever. I think at some point they would like us to come back, but it will be that way for a while. Yeah. And listen, I know it's disappointing, and I know, you know, for your students, it's not the experience they thought they were going to have, and learning this way. And look, I get it, man. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is hard for people, right? Where there's so much that we've lost out on this year, and you know, your graduation ceremonies and everything. It's just so different, and it's hard and sad. And I think that you can make space to have those feelings about that, right? To be disappointed, and then to also, well, this is what it's going to be. All right, I'm going to figure it out and go with it. So,
and that is a legitimate concern the students have, because you miss out on the college experience. You know, the dorms are closed. We can't go to campus. The CSU system has decided all 23 campuses will stay closed to campus teaching until at least January. And some of us believe it'll be another year, possibly. We don't know yet. It hasn't been confirmed. But having said that, adapting to change. One of the things I tried to teach you all way back in beginning news writing was you cannot get into a comfort zone. Talk to the students a little bit right now about get out of that comfort zone nonsense and go with the flow.
Gosh, you're so right. And you did teach that.
Yeah.
You did teach that. Can I tell this? I'll never forget being in your class. It was the first day in your class, and you said something like, if you're in here because you want to be a TV star, you might as well leave right now. Like, that's not what this class is about. And I was like, that's totally why I'm here. Oh my gosh. It's not why I'm still doing it, but back then it's why I got into journalism. I'm ashamed to say it, but I'm embarrassed of getting read. But yeah, you did talk about going with the flow and being able to adapt. And golly, Bob, I learned that at my first job in Laredo, Texas, like that you can, you know, and I know you producers, you like your rundown and you want it all set, you want everything just so, and then boom, you know, breaking news, anything happens. And the expectation, the way the newscasts are put together now, it's free flowing. I mean, any ideas that you had, a lot of times, you know, minutes before showtime, they're out the window. So yes, to learn to be adaptable and to be able to go with the flow will serve you well, certainly if you want to pursue work in television news, for sure. You have to have that mindset. And it's hard, you know, I tend to be a little OCD. It was really hard for me, but I have learned to stop fighting it, because it was causing me a lot of, like, my job felt so stressful because I wanted things to be this way and they didn't go that way. When I kind of just, okay, trusting that I had the skills to be able to, whether it's to ad lib or just, you know, you're going to one story and it's boom, we got this over here, you got to go, to just say, okay, adventure, where are we going now? All right, to change my mindset, it just helped me to alleviate some of the suffering I was causing for myself.
Exactly. Don't build it up in your brain. It has
Yeah.
to be the way you think it is, because things are going to just change at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Your campus community is very proud of you. I want you to know that. And I'm going to ask you to share a thought about what you learned about talking to people in mass communications, whether it's advertising, PR, or journalism. You spent most of the last 22 years engaging people you've never met before, getting information from them, and sometimes getting them to share some very personal issues. How has your education at San Jose State helped you to do that?
I am so grateful to this day for the education I received at San Jose State University. For you, for Darla Belshi, for all the classes that I took, all the professors I had, all the communications professors I had, and journalism teachers. I am so grateful for that. It really, I didn't even know it at the time, how well I was being set up for this TV working world. I didn't know it until after I left. Until after I left your class. I didn't appreciate until after we're like, wow, that was the place I needed to go to school. That's where I need to be educated. I mean, I think it was so comprehensive. And what I appreciated was there was never any sugarcoating anything. It was like, this is kind of this is what you're up against. You still want to do it? All right, then it's for you. You know, everyone was always you were always very honest about, you know, what we could expect when it came time to look for jobs. But as far as, you know, learning to talk to people, some of that is, you know, that's innate. That's just kind of who you are and your God-given bent and your personality. But I really do think the practice that I got, you know, in the classes and actually working at Update News and doing all those things and doing stories and interviewing people, it really set the groundwork to get me over the discomfort. It was either you or Darla, but I remember when I had to shoot something and one of you saying to me, you can't be shy. If you're going to walk into a press conference or news conference, or you're walking into, you've got to march your butt on up there and plop that camera down and set up your light and do your thing. And I remember I was really nervous, ooh, it seems obnoxious. And it was like, nope, you're right, I do. And it just kind of taught me those skills and let me practice those things, which was really, so valuable. And I appreciated the dialogue that was always encouraged in our classes. I think that also helped me to learn to speak to people and to talk and ask the right questions. You know, your education can be whatever you want it to be. I mean, as a student, it's incumbent upon you to take advantage of the resources. And even though it sucks that it has to be this way virtually or whatever, you can still, I'm sure your students have access to you. They can ask you anything. I know at least you were like that 28 years ago, and I'm sure you are open door policy. Take advantage of those things. These people know what they're saying and what they're teaching you, and ask questions. Just take it all in,
Well, when I left the business and I thought I was leaving the most passionate and exciting job I've ever had, and then I went into teaching at Illinois and then finally at San Jose State, it was the most fulfilling experience. But I did think it was important, and we still do, to tell students, we're going to tell you the truth. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to help you. We're going to connect you when you're ready. And you have to tell yourself, when I'm ready, go for it. Don't be afraid. And like this guy behind me, don't be afraid to get into good trouble. We're recording this on the day when the nation is saying its final goodbye to John Lewis, a congressman who passed away after his incredible civil rights service. I'm sure in the South they're talking about him today. And I'm sure here in our community, it's going to be all over the news again. What does a person like him telling us to get into good trouble really mean? How do you define it?
Mm-hmm. To push the envelope when it matters. You know what's in your heart. We know what we're pulled to do, what we're called to pay attention to stuff that keys us up, the stuff that breaks your heart, the stuff that makes you lose sleep at night. Go stir the pot a little bit. Go be a little bit unreasonable sometimes, get into good trouble. I love that. I just love that quote so much. And but I think you can be afraid and do it anyway. We miss out on life when we don't speak up when we know we're supposed to. I'm sure even, like with the Black Lives Matter, if, people now with people examining these things in their hearts and the times that maybe you've tolerated a racist comment or a racist joke, or you didn't take an opportunity to educate, not you personally, all of us people, when we don't take those opportunities to speak up, or like, no, don't miss those opportunities, speak up, even when it's awkward, even when it's uncomfortable, maybe even especially then, that we can't miss those opportunities, and go out and mix it up a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to communicate. He was an excellent communicator, but just because he's passed on, it doesn't mean it all dies. It has to live on in the rest of us. And I think I'm very grateful to have had someone like you in my class. I've never forgotten you. I've always wondered, how's she doing? I wonder what she's up to now. And then when I tracked you down and you were so willing to do this interview in this virtual reality style as opposed to a live guest lecture, you were very kind to do that. You are one of our distinguished graduates. We're very proud of you. Keep up the good work. Our hopes and blessings for you and your family. You're a wonderful person.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Right back at you. And I'm so grateful to you. And I have a special place in my heart for San Jose State University.
Well, whenever I can literally invite you back, hopefully before I retire, we'll definitely do that.
Oh, I would love that. I would love it.
Well, say hello to your family and congratulations on your career success. Keep up the good work. And anytime you want to talk, just let me know.
Thank you so much. Can I plug my podcast? I have a podcast. It's called Wake Up to Your Life.
Tell us more. No, go ahead. Tell us more. What's it about?
I want to go over time, and your students, I don't want them
Don't worry about that. Loving you. Go ahead.
Okay. Wake Up to Your Life is the name of my podcast. And I got certified as a life coach about 1.5 years ago. So it's kind of, a lot of it is, sort of TV stories and what I've learned after, almost 30 years of interviewing literally, thousands of people. Just some common threads I've learned about people, and it's sort of how we can all take the next step in our lives, in our careers, in our relationships, how we can get out of living on autopilot and start living on purpose and living intentionally and kind of waking up. So in all areas of your life.
Very cool. And how would we access that?
So on any platform in which you listen to a podcast, you can search, you click on the little search function like it's Google and put in Wake Up to Your Life or Colleen Odegaard. Good luck to you spelling it. I can barely spell my name, so good luck to y'all. Wake Up to Your Life might be easier. And you can subscribe for free, and then all the episodes will pop up. But I love the podcasting. I'm more proud of this than I am of anything else I've ever done. And this costs me money. I don't get paid for this. It costs me money to do it. Yeah.
Well, it's your passion. It's your passion, and it looks like you're really into it.
I love it. It's all the broadcasting stuff. I mean, it's everything. It's taking content and smushing it down, but giving it not to 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes, but letting things that should breathe. It's talking and it's listening, and it's just, I love it.
And I do have to ask you one more question. On your television show or on your podcast, will you ever engage any discussions about politics and the election coming up this November?
No.
You do not? Okay.
No. We have a political show that airs on our channel, a local political show, and they tackle that. On our show, no, because no.
Okay, and that's the purpose of your show and your podcast, and I understand that. I'm just thinking that North Carolina is going to be a major player on election night, November 3rd, at least, basically. But that's okay. I still will call you to find out how's everybody reacting, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I have a lot of feelings about it, but
well, good. You hold on to those, because you know me. I'll figure out a way to draw them out of you. Thank you, Colleen. It's great to see you.
You too. Thank you.